Maya Chen adjusted her delivery jacket with practiced precision, smoothing the wrinkles with the same attention to detail she once gave to her combat uniform. The small Speedy Eats logo on her chest was a far cry from the medal she'd earned, but it served its purpose: anonymity. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and the high collar of her jacket deliberately concealed the jagged scar that traced the left side of her neck, a permanent reminder of the day her unit was ambushed outside of Kandahar. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The restaurant staff at Westridge Country Club barely acknowledged her as she picked up the catering order. Their dismissive glances bounced off her like distant mortar fire, insignificant compared to what she'd survived. They couldn't see past the delivery uniform to the woman who'd led 23 Marines through enemy territory after their commanding officer was killed, earning her the nickname Shadow for her ability to move undetected through hostile zones. To them, she was just another faceless service worker, invisible except when needed. "Don't forget the extra sauces this time," barked the kitchen manager, not bothering to look up from his clipboard. "The general's retirement party is important. These people actually matter." Maya nodded silently, carefully loading the elaborate spread into her insulated bags. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was delivering food to a military retirement ceremony. Yet no one suspected she'd once stood at attention while generals pinned commendations on her chest. Major Maya Chen, Force Recon, decorated combat veteran. With 3 tours in Afghanistan and classified operations that would never appear in history books. Now she delivered their lunches with the same quiet efficiency she'd once used to complete missions that changed the course of conflicts. She meticulously organized the packages in her weathered Toyota Corolla, positioning them to prevent spillage. During transport, the same way she'd once packed medical supplies for wounded comrades. The car was deliberately unremarkable, its faded blue paint and minor dents making it forgettable in any parking lot. Maya preferred it that way. After the ambush that had claimed half her unit and left her with both physical and invisible scars, she'd chosen to disappear into civilian life. As she navigated the busy streets of Meridian City, her eyes constantly scanned for threats, an ingrained habit from years of combat driving. She automatically checked her mirrors every 30 seconds, maintained awareness of all vehicles within striking distance, and mentally mapped alternate routes should her primary path become compromised. To any observer, she was just a careful driver. To the handful of veterans who occasionally noticed her vigilance, she was unmistakably military, though few ever approached her. The exclusive Westridge Officers Club loomed ahead, its manicured grounds and stone facade suggesting the power and privilege of those within. Maya parked in the service entrance, automatically positioning her vehicle for a quick exit, old habits that civilian life hadn't erased. She gathered the first load of food containers, balancing them with the same steady hands that had once field-stripped weapons in complete darkness. "Deliveries use the back entrance," snapped a young security guard as Maya approached the side door, closer to the event space and more efficient for multiple trips. She wordlessly changed direction, noting how the guard's stance betrayed his lack of actual combat training. Despite the military-style uniform, his gun sat too loose in its holster. His eyes focused on her face rather than scanning her hands. The first place a trained operative would look for threats, the kitchen staff barely acknowledged her arrival, too busy preparing for the prestigious event. Maya moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency, unloading containers and arranging them according to the catering manager's brusque instructions. Her movements were economical, precise, nothing wasted, nothing excessive. "You the delivery girl?" asked an event coordinator, her voice tinged with the entitlement that came from proximity to power. "We need these arranged on the buffet immediately. The guests are arriving, and some of them are very important people." Maya nodded, suppressing the ironic smile that threatened to form. She'd once briefed cabinet secretaries on classified operations. She'd shared MREs with generals in forward operating bases. Now she was arranging their shrimp cocktails while they reminisced about wars. They directed from comfortable offices. As she worked, Maya overheard fragments of conversations, retired officers and current military brass discussing operations, policies, and personnel as if they were discussing golf scores. She recognized terms, locations, and even specific missions she'd participated in, though the speakers often got the details wrong. Her hands remained steady as they described an extraction operation near the Pakistani border that had supposedly gone flawlessly, never mentioning the 2 Marines who'd died securing the landing zone or the bullet that had torn through her neck during the final evacuation. "Can you believe they're letting anyone into the service these days?" said a middle-aged man in an ill-fitting suit that failed to disguise his military bearing. "My nephew says his platoon leader is some tiny woman who couldn't carry her own rucksack during training. Political correctness gone mad." His companion, sporting a Veterans of Foreign Wars pin, nodded in agreement. "Not like our day. We had real warriors then." Maya continued arranging food trays, her face betraying nothing as she recalled carrying her wounded radio operator 8 kilometers to extraction, her own blood soaking through her uniform from shrapnel wounds. She'd received a Silver Star for that action, though the citation remained classified. "Hey, delivery girl," called out a young server, snapping his fingers to get her attention. "When you're done playing with the fancy food, there's more stuff to bring in from your car. Some of us have real work to do." She nodded and headed back to her vehicle, maintaining the same alert posture that had kept her alive in hostile territory. The late afternoon sun caught her face as she stepped outside, highlighting the faint scar that extended from her left eyebrow to her cheekbone, another souvenir from her final mission. The young security guard stared as she passed, his eyes lingering on her face with newfound curiosity. "You get that in a car accident?" he asked, gesturing vaguely toward her face. "Something like that," Maya replied, her voice neutral. Let him assume what he wanted. The truth belonged to her and the Marines who'd served with her, not to strangers who couldn't understand the cost of the freedom they enjoyed. As she retrieved the final containers from her car, Maya spotted a distinguished older man in full dress uniform walking toward the main entrance. 4 stars gleamed on his shoulders and rows of campaign ribbons decorated his chest. Something in his bearing triggered a memory, a forward operating base in Helmand Province. A midnight briefing, a mission that wasn't supposed to exist. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the parking lot. Maya quickly looked away, adjusting her collar to ensure her neck scar remained hidden. She wasn't ready to be recognized, to have her carefully constructed anonymity stripped away. Her new life was simple, predictable, and most importantly, hers alone to control. The weight of command, of responsibility for others' lives, had been set aside. She had served her country. Now she served only herself. Maya's modest apartment on the outskirts of Meridian City held few reminders of her military career. The small living room contained only the essentials: a worn sofa, a bookshelf filled with history and tactical literature, and a simple television she rarely watched. The walls remained deliberately bare, except for a single framed photograph showing Maya with her unit, their faces dusty and exhausted, but smiling after a successful mission. Their names and location had been carefully removed from the frame. The only other military remnant was locked inside a fireproof safe hidden beneath the floorboards of her bedroom closet. Her medals, including the Silver Star and Purple Heart, her service records, and a satellite phone that connected to exactly 3 numbers. The phone hadn't rung in 18 months. After returning from the officers' club, Maya changed out of her delivery uniform and slipped into running clothes. Physical discipline remained non-negotiable in her life. 5 miles daily, strength training 3 times weekly, and hand-to-hand practice at a local gym where the owner, a former Army Ranger asked no questions and respected her preference. For solitude, the evening air carried the scent of approaching rain as Maya set out on her usual route through the neighborhood. Her pace was measured and sustainable, her breathing controlled, her eyes continuously scanning her surroundings without obvious movement. To neighbors, she appeared to be just another fitness enthusiast. None suspected that she mentally calculated distances between cover positions or that she varied her route according to established counter-surveillance protocols. At the halfway point of her run, Maya paused at Vincent Memorial Park, a small green space dedicated to local veterans. She checked her watch before approaching a bench where an elderly man sat feeding pigeons. His weathered Vietnam veteran cap and oxygen tank marked him as William Hargrove, former Navy corpsman, now battling lung cancer from Agent Orange exposure. "Evening, Bill," Maya said, sitting beside him with practiced casualness. "Breathing better today?" "Can't complain, Miss Chen," he replied, his voice raspy but determined. "New medication seems to be working. Got those forms filled out for me?" Maya pulled a folded envelope from her running jacket. "All completed. Just sign where I marked and mail it tomorrow." The VA appeals process is straightforward when you know which boxes they're looking for. Bill's gnarled hands took the envelope reverently. "Third appeal. Wouldn't have managed without you. Don't know why you bother with an old wreck like me." "We take care of our own," Maya answered simply, the phrase carrying the weight of unspoken understanding between veterans. This was her true mission. Now quiet assistance to veterans struggling with the system that had promised to care for them. Her delivery job provided flexible hours and anonymity while allowing her to navigate the city, identifying veterans in need. Her tactical planning skills now deployed against bureaucratic obstacles rather than enemy combatants. "Heard anything about that young Marine?" Bill asked, referring to a recently discharged veteran Maya had mentioned previously. "Found him temporary housing at Eastside Veterans Center. Working on getting his benefits processed correctly." Maya stood checking her watch again. "His paperwork was lost 3 times. Won't happen a 4th. Bill nodded, understanding the steel beneath her quiet tone. "Give him hell, Shadow." Maya stiffened slightly at the nickname before realizing Bill was simply using the term of endearment, not her actual call sign. She nodded and continued her run, maintaining her steady pace despite the memories churning beneath her calm exterior. At 2,100 hours precisely, Maya sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open to a spreadsheet tracking 37 veterans in various stages of crisis. Each row contained a name, needs assessment, and action items with deadlines. The organization and attention to detail mirrored her former mission planning, though the objectives had changed. Tonight she focused on Jason Winters, a 23-year-old former Marine struggling with PTSD and facing eviction. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sandra Weiss, a sympathetic counselor at the VA hospital who provided Maya with information that officially didn't exist. Records missing again for Winters. 3rd case this month. Pattern emerging. Maya's jaw tightened as she typed her response. "Send details. We'll handle." This wasn't the first time she'd encountered systematic issues with veterans' records, particularly for those from certain units or operations. Too many computer glitches, affecting too many files from specific deployments, suggested deliberate action rather than administrative error. Her tactical mind recognized patterns where others saw coincidence. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Maya moved silently to the entrance, automatically positioning herself to the side of the doorframe, a combat habit that had saved her life more than once. She checked the peephole to see her neighbor, Mrs. Gonzalez, holding a covered dish. "You work too hard, Maya," the elderly woman said when the door opened. "I made too much pozole. My Carlos always said it could cure anything." Maya accepted the offering with genuine gratitude. Mrs. Gonzalez's late husband had been a Vietnam veteran. and she seemed to instinctively recognize something familiar in Maya's eyes. Their relationship existed in the comfortable space of unasked questions and small kindnesses. "Thank you. You didn't have to nonsense. You helped me with that pipe leak last month. Besides, you're too thin." Mrs. Gonzalez patted Maya's arm with grandmotherly concern. "My Carlos was the same way. Always moving, always watching. Never stopped being a soldier, that man." Maya smiled, neither confirming nor denying the observation. "He was fortunate to have you. And those boys you help are fortunate to have you," Mrs. Gonzalez replied, her knowing eyes holding Maya's for a moment too long. "Whatever you're doing for them, it matters." After her neighbor left, Maya secured her apartment, checking locks, positioning an inconspicuous alarm system, and placing her service weapon within reach of her bed. Standard procedure, even 3 years into civilian life. The combat knife under her pillow wasn't standard issue, but it had saved her during the ambush when her primary weapon jammed. Sleep came in, measured, increments 90-minute cycles with brief periods of alertness between each. Another habit from deployment that civilian life hadn't erased. In these quiet moments of semi-wakefulness, Maya sometimes questioned her self-imposed isolation. The Corps had been her family, her purpose, her identity. Now she existed in the shadows by choice, helping others while remaining invisible herself. Her final mission had changed everything. The classified operation had gone catastrophically wrong. Bad intelligence, unexpected resistance, and a leadership failure that cost lives. Maya had taken command after her superior officer was killed, leading the survivors through 3 days of continuous combat before extraction was possible. The bullet that scarred her neck had missed her carotid artery by millimeters. The investigation afterward had been thorough but ultimately unsatisfying. Responsibility had been assigned to intelligence failures, rather than the specific commanders who had ignored Maya's assessment of the situation. Her award citation mentioned exemplary leadership, but omitted the crucial details that might have prevented similar disasters in the future. She had accepted her honorable discharge with outward grace and inward fury. The system she had served was broken in ways that cost lives, both on the battlefield and at home. Rather than fight a bureaucracy designed to resist change, Maya chose to work outside it, becoming the invisible support that official channels often failed to provide. As dawn approached, Maya reviewed her schedule for the coming day: morning delivery shifts, an appointment to help a veteran appeal his disability rating, and an evening meeting with her contact at the VA. Somewhere between these commitments, she would need to investigate the pattern of missing records that Sandra had identified. Her phone buzzed with a special delivery request from Speedy Eats, another catering order for the Officers Club, a continuation of the retirement celebrations. Maya accepted without hesitation. The universe had a strange sense of irony, sending her back to a gathering of the very brass she'd once reported to. Now as invisible service staff rather than a decorated officer, the Officers Club parking lot was significantly more crowded for Maya's second delivery. Luxury vehicles gleamed in the morning sun as uniformed personnel and civilians in formal attire streamed toward the entrance. Today's event was a continuation of yesterday's retirement ceremony, a more exclusive brunch for high-ranking officers and special guests. Maya navigated her Toyota carefully between a Mercedes and a BMW, noting the reserved parking spaces marked with ranks and names. 3 spaces from the service entrance, she spotted one labeled General Harrington, USMC. The name triggered a cascade of memories: briefing rooms in Afghanistan, operational approvals, and a reputation for demanding excellence while actually caring about the troops under his command. The food packages for today's event were more elaborate than yesterday's gourmet breakfast platters and specialized dietary requests for VIP guests. Maya organized them methodically in her insulated carriers, mentally mapping the most efficient route through the building. Same procedure as yesterday, the catering manager had told her during pickup. Except they want everything set up in the Wellington room. Some big shots coming in from DC, so don't screw it up. At the service entrance, Maya encountered a different security guard, a broad-shouldered man with a military haircut and a security contractor logo on his polo shirt. His eyes performed a professional assessment as she approached, noting her balanced stance and the controlled economy of her movements. "Delivery for the Wellington room," Maya stated. Presenting her order documentation, the guard examined her ID badge with more scrutiny than necessary. "You're not the regular guy." "I handle the priority orders," Maya replied evenly, recognizing the subtle interrogation technique. His posture relaxed slightly as he waved her through. "Down the hall, third door on the right. Stay in service areas only." The Wellington room was in controlled chaos when Maya arrived. Staff hurried to arrange tables while a red-faced man in expensive suit directed operations with the aggressive confidence of someone compensating for insecurity. "You, delivery person," he called out when he spotted Maya. "Where have you been?" "We expected these 30 minutes ago." Maya checked her watch. The order was scheduled for 9 a.m. It's 8:47. The man Davis Whitmore, according to his event coordinator badge, flushed darker. "Don't get smart with me. Start setting up over there. The general will be here in 20 minutes, and everything needs to be perfect." Maya began arranging the food with practiced efficiency, her movements drawing an appreciative glance from one of the older servers, who recognized professional competence when he saw it. As she worked, uniformed personnel began filtering into the room, junior officers, tasked with final preparations before their superiors arrived. "Can you believe headquarters is sending Colonel Brighton to oversee the new training protocols?" one lieutenant said to another as they adjusted place cards at the head table. "After what happened with the Khalid Valley operation." Maya's hands faltered momentarily before resuming their steady rhythm. Khalid Valley, her final mission. The catastrophe that had ended her career and the lives of 7 Marines under her command. "Politics," the other lieutenant replied with a shrug. "Brighton has connections. Besides, the official report cleared him." "The report was bullshit," the first responded, lowering his voice. "My roommate from Quantico was on that mission. Said the intel was solid, but Brighton ignored multiple warnings. Someone higher up protected him." Maya continued working her face betraying nothing while her mind processed this confirmation of suspicions she'd harbored for 3 years. Colonel James Brighton had dismissed her risk assessment before the mission, overruling her concerns about the team's vulnerability. During extraction, when everything went wrong exactly as she'd predicted, Brighton had been evacuated first while Maya led the remaining survivors through 3 days of continuous combat. "Careful, Michaels," the second lieutenant warned. "That kind of talk ends careers." They moved away, unaware of the impact their conversation had on the seemingly unremarkable delivery person arranging pastries nearby. The room filled steadily with officers in dress, uniforms, and government officials in formal attire. Maya kept her head down, focusing on her task while processing the implications of Colonel Brighton's continued career advancement. The official investigation had buried the truth. Warriors had died, yet the responsible officer had been protected and promoted. "Hey, food girl," Whitmore's voice cut through her thoughts. "There's a spill by the entrance. Clean it up." Maya looked toward the small puddle of water from an overturned glass. "I'm delivery, not janitorial staff." Whitmore's face contorted with indignation. "Listen, you're staff, and I need that cleaned up before the general arrives. Find something and wipe it up. Now." Rather than argue, Maya located napkins at a nearby service station. The situation wasn't worth escalating, though she noted Whitmore's misuse of authority, a common trait among civilians who found themselves with temporary power over others. As she knelt to clean the spill, the room's atmosphere shifted subtly. Conversations quieted and postures straightened as General Thomas Harrington entered, accompanied by his aide and several high-ranking officers. Among them, wearing the eagles of a full colonel, was James Brighton. Maya kept her head down, completing her task while mentally calculating the distance to the nearest exit. Brighton had never seen her face clearly during their limited interactions. In Afghanistan, operational security had kept most of their communication through secure channels. But she couldn't risk recognition. Too much had changed. Too many questions would follow. "All deliveries complete," she informed a kitchen staff member. "I'll be heading out now." As Maya moved toward the service exit, a commotion near the main entrance drew everyone's attention. A young Marine in dress blues had dropped a portfolio, scattering papers across the marble floor. His face flushed with embarrassment as he scrambled to collect them under the disapproving gaze of Colonel Brighton. "For God's sake, Lieutenant Martinez," Brighton snapped loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is why we lost good men in Afghanistan. Incompetence in the ranks." The young officer's humiliation was visible as he gathered the documents, his hands shaking slightly. Something in his expression, the shame, the powerlessness, triggered a response in Maya that overrode her caution. She had seen too many good warriors broken by the casual cruelty of poor leaders. Maya changed direction, kneeling to help collect the scattered papers. "Here you go, Lieutenant," she said quietly, handing him a stack of documents she'd gathered. "Thank you," he murmured, genuine gratitude in his eyes. Colonel Brighton's attention shifted to Maya, his gaze dismissive as it swept over her delivery uniform. "This area is for authorized personnel only. Service staff should use appropriate exits." The contempt in his voice was familiar, the same tone he'd used when dismissing her security concerns before the Khalid Valley mission. Maya felt something shift inside her. 3 years of careful anonymity warred with the responsibility she still felt toward her fellow warriors. "Just helping the lieutenant, sir," she replied, keeping her voice neutral but making direct eye contact with Brighton for the first time. Recognition flickered briefly in his eyes, quickly replaced by uncertainty. "Do I know you?" he asked, brow furrowing. "I deliver food, sir, that's all." Maya maintained eye contact a moment longer than civilian deference would dictate, then turned to survey the service exit. "Hold on," Brighton called after her, his voice carrying the expectation of immediate compliance that came with years of command. Maya paused, weighing her options. Creating a scene would draw unwanted attention, but something in Brighton's tone suggested he was connecting fragments in his memory. "Your face is familiar," he insisted, studying her more carefully now. "Were you stationed at Camp Leatherneck?" "I think you're mistaking me for someone else, sir." Maya's response was measured, revealing nothing while she assessed potential exit routes. "If you'll excuse me, I have other deliveries scheduled." Brighton seemed about to press further when General Harrington approached, his attention drawn by the interaction. "Problem here, Brighton." "No, sir. Just thought I recognized this woman from somewhere." The general's eyes turned to Maya, his gaze sharper and more assessing than Brighton's. Unlike the colonel, General Harrington had been directly involved in operational planning for special missions. He had seen Maya's file, approved her commendations, and reviewed the final report on the Khalid Valley incident. Maya maintained her composure under his scrutiny, but internally prepared for recognition and the cascade of consequences that would follow. 3 years of carefully constructed anonymity balanced on the edge of collapse. "Carry on," General Harrington said finally, his expression unreadable as he gestured for Brighton to join him at the head table. Maya didn't wait for further interaction. She moved through the service exit with unhurried precision, maintaining the appearance of an ordinary delivery person while her combat-trained mind processed what had just occurred. Brighton had almost recognized her. The general might have as well. Her carefully constructed civilian identity had developed its first significant cracked dot as she loaded her empty containers into her car, Maya noticed the general's aide watching her from a side entrance, speaking quietly into a phone. The tactical part of her mind, never fully dormant, assessed that her cover was potentially compromised. Protocols established during her transition to civilian life included contingency plans for such a situation. For now, she would continue as normal, but tonight, she would need to check the secure phone in her hidden safe. For the first time in 18 months, it might be necessary to activate her emergency contact. The morning after the Officers Club encounter, Maya's delivery schedule included a stop at the Meridian Veterans Affairs Hospital. She navigated the institutional corridors with practiced familiarity, balancing food containers for a staff meeting while mentally reviewing her contingency plans. The near recognition by Brighton had destabilized her careful equilibrium. Last night, she'd checked the secure phone in her hidden safe. 3 years of silence had left the battery depleted, requiring several hours to charge before she could verify if any messages awaited. The waiting had kept her awake, calculating probabilities and planning responses to various scenarios. ID and purpose, demanded the security guard at the administrative wing entrance. Maya presented her delivery. Service credentials. Catering for the director's budget meeting. Room 412. The guard examined her ID with exaggerated thoroughness before waving her through. Maya proceeded to the designated conference room where Sandra Weiss, her VA contact, was organizing papers for the upcoming meeting. Perfect timing, Sandra said when she spotted Maya. You can set up on the side table. As Maya arranged the food, Sandra moved closer, lowering her voice. Found something on those missing records. Multiple files from your old unit have been flagged for special handling. Authorization code traces back to Brighton's office. Maya maintained her neutral expression despite the confirmation of her suspicions. How many veterans affected? 17 so far, all from operations in Helmand Province during the same 3-month window. Sandra passed her a folder disguised among the catering paperwork. Full list inside. These guys are getting denied benefits because their service records have been administratively lost or security classifications prevent verification. Maya accepted the folder with a slight nod. I'll handle it. Be careful, Sandra warned. Brighton's been appointed to the Veterans Affairs Oversight Committee. He's scheduled to tour this facility this afternoon with Director Phillips. Something about a new initiative for streamlining disability claims processing. The information added urgency to Maya's growing concern. Brighton wasn't just continuing his career, he was now positioned to directly impact veterans' access to care and benefits. His presence at the VA facility created both risk and opportunity. Maya completed her delivery and exited through a side entrance, avoiding the main lobby where preparations for the VIP visit were underway. In her car, she quickly reviewed the folder contents 17 names, all Marines who had served under her command or in adjacent units during her final deployment, all experiencing administrative difficulties with their benefits claims. The pattern was too precise to be coincidence. Someone was systematically burying records from specific operations, particularly those connected to the Khalid Valley incident. The question was why? What was Brighton hiding beyond his own tactical failures? Maya's phone chimed with a notification from Speedy Eats, an urgent delivery request for the VA director's office. The timing seemed suspiciously convenient, but declining would draw more attention than accepting. She confirmed the assignment and headed to the restaurant for pickup. When she returned to the VA facility 45 minutes later, the atmosphere had changed. Security personnel in suits rather than uniforms monitored the entrances, and staff moved with the tense efficiency that indicated VIP presence. Delivery for Director Phillips, Maya informed the front desk receptionist, who directed her to the 6th floor executive offices. The elevator opened onto a reception area where 3 Marines in dress uniforms stood at parade rest outside the director's office. Maya recognized the uncomfortable Lieutenant Martinez from yesterday's Officers Club incident among them. His eyes widened slightly in recognition as she approached with the food containers. "I need to deliver these to Director Phillips," Maya stated, maintaining her delivery person persona. "The director is in a closed meeting," replied the senior Marine, a captain whose nameplate read Hodges. "You can leave those with me." Before Maya could respond, the office door opened, and Colonel Brighton emerged mid-conversation with a civilian. In an expensive suit. "Need to implement the new protocols immediately," Brighton was saying. "Too many unverified claims are draining resources. The classification review process I've developed will ensure only legitimate service-connected disabilities." He stopped abruptly when he noticed Maya, his eyes narrowing in concentration. "You again." "Food delivery for Director Phillips," Maya responded neutrally, holding up the containers. Brighton studied her face with growing suspicion. "You're turning up everywhere lately. First the Officers Club, now here." "I go where the delivery app sends me, sir." Maya maintained an appropriately deferential tone while avoiding direct eye contact, civilians' natural response to authority rather than a Marine's disciplined focus. "Let me see some ID," Brighton demanded, extending his hand expectantly. Maya produced her delivery service credentials, which Brighton examined with exaggerated scrutiny. "Maya Chen," he read aloud. "That's not a name I recognize, yet your face." The civilian, presumably Director Phillips, emerged fully from the office, looking annoyed at the interruption. "Is there a problem, Colonel?" "No problem, sir. Just verifying security protocols." Brighton returned Maya's ID but continued studying her. "Have you ever served in the military, Miss Chen?" "No, sir," Maya lied smoothly. "Just delivering lunch." "Director." Phillips gestured impatiently. "We're on a schedule, Colonel. The demonstration starts in 20 minutes. Brighton reluctantly turned away, but not before giving Maya one final assessing look. "Leave those with the receptionist and see yourself out." As Maya placed the food containers on the reception desk, she overheard Brighton continuing his conversation with Phillips. "As I was saying, Director, many of these so-called PTSD claims lack proper documentation. My office has identified numerous cases where the claimed incidents cannot be verified in official records." "Because you've buried those records," Maya thought, anger building beneath her composed exterior. The 17 names in Sandra's folder weren't random. They were witnesses to Brighton's failures, warriors whose testimony could contradict the sanitized official reports. "The funding reallocation plan looks promising," Phillips responded as they moved toward the elevator. "If we can reduce approval rates by even 20%, the budget implications would be significant." Maya forced herself to remain motionless until they entered the elevator, then quickly searched for Lieutenant Martinez, who had separated from the other Marines and was examining something on a tablet near the water cooler. "Lieutenant," she said quietly, approaching him with deliberate casualness, "do you have a moment?" Martinez looked up with surprise, recognition flickering in his eyes. "You're the person from yesterday, the one who helped with the papers." "I need to ask you something," Maya continued, keeping her voice low. "It's about Colonel Brighton's new classification protocols for veterans' records." Wariness immediately replaced his openness. "That's not something I can discuss with civilians, even if those protocols are preventing wounded warriors from receiving their earned benefits." Maya pressed, allowing a hint of her military bearing to show through her civilian disguise. Martinez studied her with newfound intensity. "Who are you really?" Before Maya could respond, Captain Hodges approached. "Martinez, we're needed downstairs." "And you," he addressed Maya with undisguised contempt. "Delivery personnel aren't authorized to linger in administrative areas." "Just leaving, sir," Maya replied, reverting to her delivery person persona. "Make sure you do," Hodges said dismissively. "Security is escorting all non-essential staff from the building for the duration of the Colonel's visit." As if on cue, two security officers appeared at the reception area entrance. One gestured impatiently for Maya to follow them to the elevator. "This way, ma'am. All service workers need to clear the executive level." The deliberate condescension in his tone triggered something in Maya, not just personal offense, but recognition of the systemic disrespect faced by both service workers and veterans. The same system that allowed Brighton to bury records and deny benefits treated both groups as invisible and disposable. As the security officers escorted her to the service elevator, Maya noticed a sign directing visitors to a special presentation. "Streamlining Veteran Services" in the main auditorium. The timing aligned with Brighton's mentioned demonstration. "Is that event open to the public?" she asked one of the guards, gesturing toward the sign. "Press and invited guests only," he replied curtly. "Building maintenance and delivery personnel. Use the service exits only." Maya nodded compliant understanding while mentally plotting an alternative approach. If Brighton was publicly presenting his new protocols, the same ones being used to deny benefits to her former Marines, she needed to hear exactly what he was planning. Outside in the parking lot, Maya removed her delivery company jacket and cap, replacing them with a blazer kept in her car for meetings with veterans needing formal representation. With her hair quickly pinned up and reading glasses added, she transformed from delivery person to professional, a simple but effective identity shift she'd perfected during her intelligence operations. The press entrance to the auditorium was minimally secured, a single check-in table where a board staff member verified names against a list of approved media outlets. Maya bypassed this entirely by entering through a side door held open by maintenance staff, bringing in additional chairs. Inside, she selected a seat near the back, positioning herself to observe while remaining inconspicuous. The auditorium filled quickly with journalists, administrators, and military personnel. On stage, Director Phillips conferred with Colonel Brighton and several officials Maya didn't recognize. Digital displays showed PowerPoint slides with clinical titles like Verification Protocol Implementation and Resource Allocation Optimization. Maya settled in to gather intelligence on Brighton's plans. She didn't notice General Harrington quietly entering through a private entrance, accompanied by his aide. Nor did she see the general's eyes scanning the audience until they locked onto her transformed, but still recognizable figure in the back row. Director Phillips approached the podium, tapping the microphone twice before addressing the assembled crowd. "Thank you all for coming to this special presentation on our new Veteran Services Efficiency Initiative. Today, Colonel James Brighton will outline innovative protocols designed to streamline the benefits verification process and ensure resources reach those with legitimate service-connected needs." The polite applause that followed masked the underlying tension Maya sensed in the room. Several veteran service organization representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging concerned glances. The carefully chosen language, efficiency, streamline, legitimate, signaled bureaucratic euphemisms for benefit reductions. Colonel Brighton took the stage with the confident stride of a man accustomed to deference. His perfectly pressed uniform and commanding presence projected authority, though Maya recognized the subtle signs of a leader who relied on rank rather than respect: the slightly too rigid posture, the practiced smile that never reached his eyes. The Veterans Affairs Department faces unprecedented challenges. Brighton began, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of a rehearsed presentation. Limited resources must be allocated based on verified service-connected disabilities. Yet our current system lacks rigorous verification protocols. The first slide appeared on the massive screen behind him, a graph showing increasing disability claims over the past decade, with PTSD claims highlighted in alarming red. Post-traumatic stress disorder claims have increased 340% since 2010. Brighton continued, gesturing toward the graph. Many of these claims cite classified operations where standard verification is impossible. My team has developed a solution, a new classification review protocol that creates verification pathways while protecting national security. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Maya's jaw tightened as Brighton clicked to the next slide. The protocol flowchart showed a complex system of verification steps, each adding layers of administrative requirements for veterans seeking benefits. What appeared reasonable on the surface masked a deliberate obstruction strategy she recognized from her intelligence background, creating so many verification hurdles that most applicants would eventually abandon their claims out of frustration or necessity. Under this new protocol, Brighton explained with clinical detachment, veterans claiming disability from classified operations must provide specific documentation meeting heightened verification standards. Without compromising security, we can ensure only legitimate claims receive limited resources. From her position near the back, Maya studied the room's reaction. Most administrators nodded approvingly at the bureaucratic efficiency. Media representatives scribbled notes without questioning the underlying assumptions. Only the veteran advocates appeared troubled, though their professional demeanor masked their concerns. To demonstrate the efficacy of this approach, Brighton continued, we've conducted a pilot review of claims from selected operations in Afghanistan during 2019 to 2020. Our findings show approximately 62% of PTSD claims lacked sufficient verification. Under the new protocol, Maya felt her pulse quicken. The specific date range corresponded exactly to her final deployment period, including the Khalid Valley operation. Brighton wasn't just creating general obstacles. He was specifically targeting claims from operations where his leadership had failed. For example, Brighton said, clicking to a slide showing redacted claim forms, this applicant cited a traumatic event during an operation that official records indicate was routine and successful with no casualties. The redacted form couldn't hide details Maya immediately recognized. The location coordinates, date, and unit designation matched one of her team's missions where they'd encountered heavy resistance despite intelligence suggesting minimal opposition. Brighton's official record contradicted the bloody reality she and her Marines had experienced. By implementing these verification standards, Brighton continued smoothly. We estimate annual savings of $42 million through denial of unsubstantiated claims. Maya's training in emotional control barely contained her growing fury. Brighton wasn't just denying benefits, he was erasing history, rewriting missions to hide his failures while punishing the warriors who had survived his poor leadership. The 17 Marines in Sandra's folder weren't random cases. They were witnesses whose suffering contradicted Brighton's sanitized reports. As the presentation continued, Maya noticed movement near the private entrance. General Harrington had entered quietly with his aide, observing from the side rather than taking a reserved seat at the front. His presence was unusual for what was essentially a bureaucratic announcement, suggesting additional interest in Brighton's initiative. The general scanned the audience methodically, his experienced eyes assessing the room with the habitual vigilance Maya recognized from her own training. When his gaze reached her section, she instinctively lowered her face toward her notepad, but the movement itself drew his attention. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the crowded auditorium. Maya looked away first, but the momentary connection had been established. From her peripheral vision, she observed Harrington lean toward his aide, speaking quietly while maintaining his attention on her position. The aide nodded and discreetly exited through a side door. On stage, Brighton had moved to the implementation timeline. Phase 1 begins immediately with retroactive review of high-value claims from specified operations. Veterans affected by this review will receive notification within 30 days. A veteran advocate in the front row raised her hand. Colonel, what appeals process will be available for veterans whose claims are denied under this new protocol? Brighton's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Standard appeals processes remain unchanged, though classified operation citations will require additional security verification steps, which effectively creates insurmountable barriers, the advocate pressed, particularly for veterans suffering from PTSD or traumatic brain injuries who may struggle with complex administrative requirements. These protocols protect both taxpayer resources and national security, Brighton replied, his tone hardening. Veterans with legitimate claims will navigate the process successfully. The exchange continued, but Maya's attention shifted to the auditorium entrance where two security personnel had appeared, conferring with a third man who had just arrived, the general's aide. He gestured subtly in Maya's direction, prompting the security team to scan the audience. Maya assessed her options with combat-honed efficiency. The main exit was now monitored. The distance to the emergency exit would require crossing open space, drawing immediate attention. Remaining in place might allow her to blend with the departing crowd after the presentation, though that assumed the security team wouldn't approach directly. On stage, Brighton had moved to his conclusion. This initiative represents the future of responsible Veteran Services Administration, ensuring resources go to verified service-connected disabilities while protecting classified operations. The presentation shifted to a carefully produced video showing satisfied veterans receiving prompt services, a stark contrast to the reality Maya had witnessed in her work with struggling former warriors. As the lights dimmed slightly for the video, she noticed the security team splitting up, one moving along the left wall while another approached from the right. Their coordinated movement confirmed they were searching for someone specific. When the lights came back up, Director Phillips returned to the podium for closing remarks. "We'll now take questions from the press. Please hold your media badges up to be recognized." The distraction of reporters raising their credentials provided Maya with temporary cover. She remained seated while assessing the changing security positions. The aide had disappeared, but the security personnel continued their methodical scan of the audience. As the first reporter began asking a question about implementation costs, Maya felt a presence beside her. Without turning her head, she registered someone taking the previously empty seat to her right. "Major Chen," General Harrington said quietly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. "Or do you prefer Maya now?" Maya maintained her forward gaze, muscles tensing imperceptibly as years of operational discipline warred with 3 years of constructed civilian identity. "You have me confused with someone else, sir." "I don't think so, Major." Harrington's tone remained conversational, though his words carried absolute certainty. "SEAL Team 4 doesn't forget its own, especially not an operator of your caliber." The direct reference to her classified unit affiliation eliminated any possibility of continued denial. Maya turned slightly, meeting the general's steady gaze with the disciplined composure that had earned her the call sign Shadow. "General Harrington," she acknowledged, her voice shifting subtly from delivery person to military officer. "I'm no longer in service." "Your discharge was administrative, not dishonorable," he replied. "Your country still considers you one of its finest." Below on stage, Brighton was fielding a question about the specific operations included in the pilot review. His answer carefully avoided mentioning Khalid Valley by name while clearly referencing the operational timeframe. "Why are you here, Maya?" Harrington asked. "Delivery jobs don't typically lead to VA policy presentations." "The same reason you're observing from the back instead of sitting in your reserved front row seat," she answered, recognizing his tactical positioning. "Gathering intelligence before taking action." The general's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested approval of her assessment. "Brighton's initiative concerns you. It's designed to deny benefits to warriors who served under my command," Maya stated, abandoning pretense. The 17 Marines on his pilot review list all participated in operations where his leadership failed. He's burying their records to protect his reputation and advancement. Harrington's eyes narrowed slightly. That's a serious accusation against a decorated officer. It's a factual statement backed by evidence, Maya countered, her voice hardening. Sandra Weiss in records has documentation showing systematic classification of specific mission reports. All operations where Brighton's decisions resulted in unnecessary casualties. On stage, Brighton was describing the rigorous standards his team had developed for PTSD verification. Standards that would effectively invalidate the experiences of Maya's Marines without directly questioning their honesty. These brave men and women deserve better than bureaucratic erasure, Maya continued, allowing controlled emotion to color her words. Jason Winters lost his right leg below the knee because Brighton ignored intelligence about IEDs on our extraction route. Now Brighton's protocols deny Winters' PTSD claim because the official record doesn't match Jason's actual experience. Harrington studied her with the focused attention of a commander evaluating a critical mission briefing. You've been tracking this for 3 years, Maya confirmed. Helping veterans navigate the system Brighton is now formalizing to exclude them. The question and answer session continued on stage, with Brighton masterfully deflecting concerns from veteran advocates, while emphasizing cost savings that appealed to budget-conscious administrators. His presentation was building toward unchallenged acceptance, each carefully constructed answer cementing his protocol's implementation. "What do you intend to do?" Harrington asked, his tone suggesting the question was more than casual curiosity. "What I've always done," Maya replied simply. "Protect my Marines." Before Harrington could respond, Director Phillips announced the final question. Brighton scanned the audience, selecting a friendly face from the administrative section. How quickly can other VA facilities implement these proven protocols? The selected administrator asked, the softball question clearly designed to end the session on a positive note. Brighton smiled with practiced confidence. Training begins next week, with full implementation expected within 60 days. Our veterans deserve nothing less than the efficient, security-conscious process we've developed. The cynical co-opting of "our veterans deserve" language ignited something in Maya that 3 years of careful anonymity couldn't extinguish. Without consciously deciding to act, she found herself on her feet. "Colonel Brighton," she called out, her voice carrying with the practiced command presence that had once directed special operations teams. "Would you please explain how your protocol addresses missions where official records were deliberately falsified to cover leadership failures?" The auditorium fell silent, the unexpected challenge hanging in the air like the moment before an ambush. Every head turned toward Maya, standing tall in the back row, her posture betraying military bearing despite civilian clothes. Brighton's practiced smile faltered as he scanned the audience for the source of the question. "I don't believe we've been introduced," he said when he located her, his voice maintaining its public relations smoothness. "And your question seems to contain unfounded assumptions." "My question is specifically about Khalid Valley, Colonel," Maya continued, her voice carrying with parade ground clarity. "Operation Copper Wire, May 14, 2020. Your official report cited minimal resistance and textbook extraction. 7 Marines died because you ignored multiple intelligence warnings about enemy reinforcements." The color drained from Brighton's face, his composure cracking visibly as classified operational details were spoken aloud in a public forum. Director Phillips moved quickly to the microphone. "This presentation concerns administrative protocols, not specific operations," he interjected. "Security, please escort this person out." 2 security officers moved toward Maya's position, but General Harrington stood beside her, his 4 stars instantly freezing them in place. "I believe the question deserves an answer, Director," Harrington stated, his authoritative tone leaving no room for argument. "Colonel Brighton has specifically cited operational records as the verification standard for his new protocols. The integrity of those records seems directly relevant. Brighton's eyes darted between Maya and General Harrington, recognition and alarm spreading across his features as he connected the dots. This is neither the time nor place to discuss classified operations, General. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in private. You chose this forum to announce protocols that will deny benefits to wounded warriors. Maya replied, stepping into the aisle for better visibility. The veterans whose records you've buried deserve to hear your justification. A murmur spread through the audience as journalists sensed a developing story beyond the administrative announcement they'd expected. Several began recording with their phones, capturing the unexpected confrontation. "Security," Brighton snapped, desperation edging into his voice. "Remove that woman immediately. She's disrupting an official presentation." The security personnel looked uncertainly between Brighton and General Harrington, caught in a conflict of authority. The general made no move to step aside, his presence effectively shielding Maya from removal. "I have documentation proving systematic burial of records from specific operations under Colonel Brighton's command," Maya continued, addressing the journalists directly. 17 Marines from these operations have had their benefit claims denied because the colonel has classified records that would verify their experiences. Brighton abandoned pretense, his voice hardening with threat. "You're making accusations without clearance to access classified information. That's a federal offense." "I had clearance for those operations, Colonel," Maya responded, her voice unwavering. "I was there." The declaration landed like artillery fire, silencing the growing murmurs. Brighton's eyes narrowed as he studied her face more carefully, fragments of recognition finally connecting in his memory. "Chen," he said slowly. "Major Maya Chen, Force Recon." The confirmation of her military identity rippled through the audience. A veteran advocate in the front row stood for a better view, his eyes widening in recognition. "Ghost Company," the advocate said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Your shadow." Maya neither confirmed nor denied the call sign, but her silence was answer enough. From the stage, Brighton attempted damage control. "Major Chen was administratively discharged 3 years ago," he announced, his tone suggesting disgrace rather than honor. "Her recollection of events conflicts with official records." "My recollection conflicts with your falsified reports," Maya corrected. "The same reports you're now using as the verification standard to deny benefits to the Marines who served under my command." As she spoke, Maya removed her reading glasses and unpinned her hair, allowing it to fall naturally around her shoulders. The deliberate transformation from anonymous professional to identified veteran was subtle but effective. Throughout the auditorium, phones continued recording the unexpected confrontation. "This is outrageous," Director Phillips sputtered. "Colonel Brighton's service record is exemplary. These unfounded accusations are documented," General Harrington interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of his rank and position. "I've reviewed Major Chen's evidence personally. The discrepancies between survivor accounts and official reports warrant immediate investigation." The revelation that the general, the highest-ranking Marine officer present, supported Maya's allegations transformed the dynamic instantly. What Brighton might have dismissed as one disgruntled veteran's claims now carried the implicit backing of military leadership. "With respect, General," Brighton attempted, desperation creeping into his voice. "Operational security requires certain details remain classified." Major Chen's unauthorized disclosure of "I've authorized nothing classified," Maya interrupted. "I've simply questioned the integrity of records being used to deny earned benefits. The 17 Marines on your pilot review all served in operations where your leadership decisions resulted in unnecessary casualties. That correlation deserves explanation." Brighton's face flushed with anger as his carefully constructed narrative unraveled. "You have no right to question my command decisions. You were a junior officer with limited perspective on operational complexity. I was the officer who extracted your survivors after you abandoned them. Maya responded, her control slipping momentarily to reveal the steel beneath. I carried Lieutenant Williams for 3 kilometers with a bullet in my own neck after your minimal resistance turned into an ambush exactly where my intelligence assessment had warned. The mention of her wound caused several eyes to focus. On Maya's neck, where her collar had shifted enough to reveal the edge of a jagged scar. A journalist in the front row zoomed his camera for a closer look. Capturing the visible evidence of her sacrifice. Brighton recognized his deteriorating position and attempted to regain control. This is neither the time nor venue for personal grievances, Major. Your discharge was arranged with the understanding that certain matters would remain confidential. I agreed to classification of operations, Colonel, not falsification of records, Maya replied. I've honored my security obligations while watching you systematically deny benefits to wounded warriors by burying the truth about what happened under your command. The veteran advocate who had recognized her earlier spoke up again. The shadow protocols, is that what this is about? The classified extraction procedures your team developed? The question contained enough operational knowledge to confirm the advocate's familiarity with Maya's unit. Brighton's expression turned thunderous at the mention of classified material in an open forum. This presentation is concluded, he announced abruptly. Further discussion requires appropriate security clearances. Everyone without proper authorization needs to leave immediately. No one moved. The confrontation had transcended an administrative announcement, transforming into something raw and compelling that held the audience captive. Director Phillips looked helplessly toward his security team, but with General Harrington standing beside Maya, they remained uncertainly in place. The verification protocols Colonel Brighton has proposed, Maya continued, addressing the room at large, are designed specifically to create insurmountable barriers for veterans whose experiences contradict his falsified reports. This isn't about protecting classified information, it's about protecting his career. Advancement at the expense of wounded warriors. Brighton abandoned the podium, striding toward the steps that would take him into the audience, toward Maya. His face had transformed from composed officer to something harder and more dangerous. You were discharged for a reason, Major, he said, his voice pitched to carry. Your psychological evaluation after Khalid Valley raised serious concerns about your stability and judgment. Perhaps those issues persist. The attempt to discredit her as mentally unstable, a tactic Maya had seen deployed against other veterans who challenged authority, ignited cold fury behind her disciplined exterior. Before she could respond, General Harrington stepped forward. Colonel Brighton, he said, his voice carrying the absolute authority of his rank, I suggest you reconsider that line of attack. Major Chun's service record includes a Silver Star for the actions you're attempting to discredit, awarded on my personal recommendation after reviewing all operational details. The revelation that her superior officer, a 4-star general, stood as witness to her service record shifted the dynamic once again. Brighton's face revealed the dawning realization that he had miscalculated dramatically. As Brighton fumbled for response, Lieutenant Martinez emerged from his position near the stage, moving to stand at attention facing Maya. Without speaking, he rendered a crisp, formal salute, a junior officer acknowledging a superior despite her civilian clothes. The gesture, unexpected and powerful in its simplicity, communicated what words could not: recognition, respect, and belief in her integrity over Brighton's authority. Lieutenant Martinez's salute created a visible ripple effect through the auditorium. 2 other Marines in uniform near the stage straightened instinctively, their eyes widening in recognition as the significance of Martinez's gesture registered. A veteran in the 3rd row stood, followed by another near the back. Within moments, every current and former military member in the audience was on their feet, a spontaneous show of respect that required no coordination or explanation. Brighton watched in mounting horror as his authority evaporated before his eyes. The carefully orchestrated presentation that should have secured his bureaucratic power had transformed into a public unmasking. His gaze darted between faces, searching for allies and finding none. "This is inappropriate," he protested, but his voice had lost its commanding edge. "Director Phillips, I insist you clear the room immediately." Phillips remained frozen at the podium, visibly calculating the political implications of the unfolding scenario. Supporting Brighton risked antagonizing General Harrington and the clearly supportive veteran community. Acknowledging Maya's allegations meant admitting systemic failures within his own department. Perhaps, General Harrington suggested with deceptive mildness, we should address Major Chun's specific concerns about the 17 Marines whose benefits have been denied based on potentially falsified records. The strategic redirection from Brighton's character to the affected veterans shifted the confrontation from personal to systemic. Several journalists had begun typing rapidly on their phones, recording details for immediate publication. "Those cases are under standard review," Brighton attempted, retreating to bureaucratic language. "Administrative classifications sometimes necessitate additional verification steps that may delay. Jason Winters lost his leg because you ignored intelligence." "About IEDs," Maya interrupted, her voice controlled but carrying unmistakable intensity. "Now he's homeless because your classification prevents verification of his service-connected PTSD. Michael Rivera suffers traumatic brain injury from the explosion that killed 3 of his teammates, an explosion my intelligence assessment specifically warned about. Your report claims there was no significant enemy activity in that sector." Each name landed like an accusation, the specific details demonstrating intimate knowledge that couldn't be dismissed as hearsay. Brighton's face flushed darker as Maya continued methodically through the list of affected veterans, connecting each case to specific operational discrepancies. "These aren't administrative details, Colonel," she concluded. "These are warriors who bled while following your orders, only to be abandoned twice, first on the battlefield, and now in the benefit system you're manipulating to cover your failures." A veteran advocate near the front row stood, addressing Director Phillips rather than Brighton. "Sir, I have 5 of these cases in my current caseload. Each Marine has provided sworn statements about their experiences that contradict the official records Colonel Brighton is using as verification standards. If Major Chun's allegations about falsified reports are correct, it constitutes deliberate obstruction of earned benefits." Phillips glanced nervously toward Brighton, who had begun retreating toward the stage steps. The Colonel's body language betrayed his desire to escape the increasingly hostile environment, but Maya's next words froze him in place. "Colonel Brighton is welcome to dispute my account of Khalid Valley," she announced, her hand moving to the collar of her blazer. "But physical evidence is harder to deny." With deliberate slowness, Maya unbuttoned her collar and pulled it aside, revealing the jagged scar that traced from below her ear down the side of her neck, a vicious reminder of how close the bullet had come to ending her life. The wound had healed badly, the field medicine available during 3 days of continuous combat, providing function but not aesthetics. "Sniper fire during extraction," she stated flatly, "after your helicopter departed with the first evacuation group, leaving the rest of us to fight through 3 kilometers of enemy-controlled territory with wounded Marines." The visible evidence of her sacrifice silenced the room completely. Brighton stared at the scar, recognition and remembrance visibly washing over his features as fragmented reports from that chaotic operation assembled into coherent truth. "You weren't supposed to be there," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "Intelligence said the zone was clear for extraction." "My intelligence assessment specifically warned it wasn't," Maya corrected, her voice steady. "You overruled me, citing command experience and dismissing my analysis as excessive caution. 7 Marines died because of that decision. I have their names memorized." "Do you?" The direct challenge hung in the air between them. Brighton's silence provided its own damning answer. From the audience, Sandra Weiss stood, clutching a tablet. "I have the 17 cases documented here," she announced, her administrative demeanor giving way to controlled anger. "Each record shows the same pattern: original field reports classified or modified after submission, with subsequent benefits claims denied due to insufficient documentation of claimed incidents. The systematic nature of the obstruction, laid bare by someone from within the VA system itself, transformed the confrontation from one veteran's grievance to evidence of deliberate malfeasance." Director Phillips seemed to recognize the shifting ground beneath his feet. "These are serious allegations that warrant immediate investigation," he stated, attempting to position himself ahead of the scandal rather than caught within it. "I'm directing an immediate review of all cases connected to the operations in question, while still using Colonel Brighton's protocols as the verification standard," Maya challenged. "The same officer who falsified the original reports cannot be the authority determining their accuracy." General Harrington stepped forward, his voice carrying the full weight of his rank and authority. "The Department of Defense will conduct an independent review of all operational records connected to these cases, with appropriate security measures to protect classified information while ensuring factual accuracy." The intervention effectively removed the verification process from Brighton's control, placing it under military rather than VA authority. Brighton recognized the implications immediately. "General, with respect, civilian veterans' benefits fall under VA jurisdiction, not military oversight," he protested. "This unprecedented intervention is entirely appropriate when evidence suggests deliberate falsification of military operational records." Harrington completed. "These Marines served under my overall command, Colonel. Their welfare remains my responsibility even after discharge." The statement carried implications beyond the immediate confrontation. A four-star general publicly reclaiming responsibility for veterans after their transition to civilian life challenged the entire compartmentalized system that separated active duty care from veteran services. Lieutenant Martinez stepped forward, standing at attention before addressing General Harrington. "Sir, permission to speak freely regarding classified operations." Harrington nodded once, his expression grave. "Granted, Lieutenant. Security considerations noted, but temporarily suspended given the circumstances." Martinez turned to face the audience, his posture reflecting both military discipline and moral conviction. "I served as communications specialist during 3 operations under Colonel Brighton's command, including perimeter security for the Kulid Valley extraction. The official report claiming minimal resistance contradicts what I personally witnessed and reported. Heavy enemy fire from the ridge positions, exactly where Major Chun's intelligence assessment had predicted. The first-hand corroboration from a currently serving officer shattered any remaining doubt about Maya's allegations." Brighton's face had gone from flush to ashen as his carefully constructed narrative collapsed completely. "My career," he began, before catching himself. The unfinished sentence revealed more than any defense could have. "Your career has been protected for 3 years at the expense of wounded warriors," Maya stated, her voice carrying neither vindictiveness nor satisfaction, only factual certainty. "That ends today." Throughout the auditorium, journalists were already filing preliminary reports, their phones capturing every moment of the confrontation. Veterans service organizations representatives huddled in small groups, comparing notes and client lists, identifying additional cases potentially affected by Brighton's manipulated records. Director Phillips attempted to regain control of the rapidly deteriorating situation. "This presentation is officially concluded. Colonel Brighton will be temporarily reassigned pending investigation of these allegations. All implementation of the new verification protocols is suspended effective immediately." The bureaucratic language couldn't mask the significance of the announcement. Brighton's carefully designed system for denying benefits had collapsed before it could be fully implemented. The colonel himself stood isolated at the bottom of the stage steps, former colleagues creating subtle distance as they recognized the trajectory of his falling star. Maya remained standing beside General Harrington, her civilian clothes contrasting with her unmistakably military bearing. The delivery girl disguise had been permanently discarded, revealing the officer beneath, not from desire for recognition, but from necessity to protect those still suffering from Brighton's betrayal. "What happens to the 17 Marines whose benefits were denied?" she asked, addressing her question to Phillips rather than Brighton. "They've already waited years while suffering from wounds received in service." Before Phillips could formulate a bureaucratically safe response, General Harrington intervened again. "Effective immediately, all 17 cases will receive expedited review under my personal authority, with presumptive approval pending completion of the investigation." The decisive action bypassing normal procedures to deliver immediate relief demonstrated a commander's understanding that justice delayed was justice denied for veterans in crisis. Phillips nodded agreement, recognizing that resistance would be both futile and politically damaging. As the confrontation's immediate intensity began to subside, replaced by the methodical documentation of journalists and the professional planning of veteran advocates, Maya felt a presence at her side. The elderly veteran from Vincent Memorial Park, Bill Hargrove, had made his way through the crowd, his oxygen tank trailing behind him. "Knew you weren't just a librarian," he said, his weathered face creased with a knowing smile. "The way you moved, the way you assessed situations. Recognized it, same as I recognized others who'd seen the elephant." Maya acknowledged his perception with a slight nod. "Some habits don't fade." "Don't need to," Bill replied. "They keep us alive." He gestured toward her exposed neck scar. "That's why they called you Shadow, isn't it? You're the one who got her whole unit out after that botched extraction everyone whispered about. 7 dead, but it would have been 27 without you." Maya didn't confirm or deny Bill's identification of her call sign, but her silence carried its own affirmation. Around them, the auditorium had transformed from formal presentation to chaotic activity. Center as journalists conducted impromptu interviews with veteran advocates and VA staff, whispered urgently among themselves. Colonel Brighton had been escorted from the room by 2 Marine officers whose expressions suggested professional courtesy, barely containing personal contempt. "Major Chen," General Harrington said, his voice pitched for privacy despite the surrounding commotion. "My car is waiting outside. I believe we should continue this conversation at headquarters." Maya assessed the tactical situation with ingrained precision. Remaining at the VA facility meant answering endless questions from journalists and officials, diluting the impact of what she'd accomplished. Following Harrington offered direct access to the authority capable of implementing immediate change for her affected Marines. "Yes, sir," she agreed with the reflexive response of a military officer rather than the civilian she'd pretended to be for 3 years. As they moved toward the private exit, Lieutenant Martinez intercepted them, standing at attention. "Major Chen, he hesitated, military protocol warring with evident emotion. "My brother was in 2nd Squad during Khalid Valley. He survived because of you." The simple statement carried more weight than elaborate praise could have conveyed. Maya nodded acknowledgement, recognizing the connection that transcended rank and time, the unbreakable bond between those who had faced death together. "Your brother is on the list," she confirmed quietly. "His benefits claim will be expedited immediately." "He'll want to thank you personally," Martinez replied. "We all thought you were dead or disappeared. There were rumors, but nothing confirmed." "I needed to disappear for a while," Maya answered, the admission easier now that her identity had been reclaimed. "But I never stopped fighting for them." General Harrington's aide appeared at the door, signaling their transportation was positioned. For optimal security, a professional courtesy that acknowledged Maya's operational active duty with immediate promotion to Lieutenant Colonel, Harrington stated. Leading a new joint task force focused on reforming the transition process between military service and VA benefits. Your unique perspective, having operated on both sides, provides essential insight. The offer represented perfect strategic utilization of her experience addressing systemic failures from within the system itself, with rank sufficient to implement meaningful change. 3 years ago, it would have been everything she wanted, or? Maya asked, recognizing from the general's phrasing that alternatives existed. Or you continue your current mission independently, with official recognition and support rather than obstruction, he replied. Your work helping individual veterans navigate the system has been more effective than our institutional efforts. Sometimes the most important battles are fought outside formal chains of command. The acknowledgement of her unofficial work's value represented something rare in military hierarchy recognition that official structures sometimes required external pressure to evolve. Harrington was offering her legitimacy without requiring conformity. Before Maya could respond, her phone displayed another message, this one from Jason Winters, the homeless Marine whose benefits had been denied based on Brighton's falsified reports. "They just called me. Benefits approved effective immediately. Thank you, Major. Semper Fi." The simple message crystallized the reality of her impact. Systemic change might require years of institutional reform, but individual veterans needed immediate advocacy. The 17 Marines on her list couldn't wait for task forces and policy revisions. "I need to consider my options, sir," Maya replied finally. Harrington nodded understanding. "The position remains available when you decide. Either path serves the mission, just different tactical approaches to the same strategic objective." As they left the conference room, Maya noticed the headquarters television displaying breaking news coverage of the confrontation. Her face appeared on screen as a reporter described shocking allegations of systematic fraud in Veterans Benefits Administration. The closed caption referenced Major Maya Chen, decorated Marine officer and advocate for wounded warriors. The public identity felt strange after years of deliberate anonymity, yet it also carried a curious sense of homecoming recognition of who she had always been beneath the civilian disguise. The delivery girl had served her purpose, allowing Maya to operate undetected while helping individual veterans. That chapter had ended, but the mission continued. Outside headquarters, Maya found Lieutenant Martinez waiting beside her Toyota. The juxtaposition of her weathered civilian vehicle against the military backdrop embodied the dual world she had inhabited. "Your car, Major," he said, offering her keys with formal respect that acknowledged her rank despite her civilian clothes. General Harrington arranged temporary base access authorization. As Maya drove through the base gates, the setting sun cast long shadows across the parade grounds where she had once stood at attention. In her rearview mirror, she glimpsed General Harrington watching her departure, not with disappointment, but with understanding that warriors sometimes served most effectively outside traditional boundaries. 6 months later, Maya Chen stood before a congressional committee, her silver star and purple heart displayed prominently on her blazer as she testified about systematic reforms to veterans' benefits processes. Behind her sat 17 Marines from her former command, each now receiving their earned benefits, each a living testament to her refusal to abandon her people. Colonel Brighton had been reduced in rank and forced into retirement, his career ending in disgrace. More importantly, the verification protocols he'd designed had been dismantled, replaced by a transparent system. Maya had helped develop one that honored veterans' experiences rather than bureaucratic convenience. She hadn't accepted Harrington's offer of formal reinstatement. Instead, she'd established the Shadow Foundation, a nonprofit that combined her tactical expertise with legal resources to advocate for veterans caught in bureaucratic battles. The delivery uniform had been replaced by a simple blazer with a Marine Corps pin, her identity no longer hidden, her mission no longer solitary. "Some scars never fully heal," Maya told the committee, her hand unconsciously touching the mark on her neck. "But they remind us why we continue fighting, not just on the battlefield, but here at home, for those who served beside us." If this story moved you, hit the subscribe button and join our community of everyday heroes. From which country are you watching? Let us know in the comments below. That remember to share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that sometimes the quietest among us carry the heaviest burdens and the strongest hearts. New inspirational stories every Tuesday and Friday. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel